Who creates money? If you ask this question to many people, they're going to say something like, well, it's the government or it's the central bank or something along those lines. But that's actually very wrong because most of what become money in the system, in the economy, is actually created by banks through credit creation, as I'm going to show you with this sketch right here. So for simplicity purposes, let's assume that in the economy, there's only one bank called United Bank. And then there are people in the economy, right? There are participants in the economy. And our first participant here is Uncle Richard. Uncle Richard is a very rich guy. He has a lot of money that he doesn't really know what to do with that money. So he goes to United Bank and deposits that money. Let's say he deposits $100,000 at the bank, right? And so you realize that Uncle Richard's account at United Bank gets credited with $100,000. But the problem is that United Bank cannot just sit on this money. They have to do something with that money because, as you know, a bank is also a business. So they have to create some kind of way to make money to keep the bank running because the bank has to pay salaries and things like that. So they have to create, do some kind of loan. They have to lend this money out. And then here you have Mr. John who wants to start a company, or maybe he already has a company called John Logistics, right? So Mr. John is an entrepreneur and he has a company called John Logistics and he wants to expand the company. He wants to buy a new truck. He goes to the bank and shows his business plan and says, hey, United Bank, I want to expand my business. As you can see, historically, I've been making profit. The business is booming. And United Bank says, okay, Mr. John, we are going to lend you $90,000 of this original $100,000 from Uncle Sam. So, because, usually the bank cannot just lend all the money. They have to keep something in the bank according to the law. And let's assume that originally Uncle Richard deposited his money at the bank for a 4% interest. So he agreed with the bank that they are going to pay him 4% interest for depositing his money at this bank. Now, let's say Uncle John, Mr. John, who is an entrepreneur, and he has, he started a company called John Logistics, and he has shown his business plan to United Bank, showing that his business is booming and he wants to expand by buying this new truck, right? So he goes to the bank and tell him that, okay, my business is booming. If you lend me some money, I can make enough profit to pay you even 10% every year. And United Bank sees that, wow, that's actually a very good thing because if we take the money from Uncle Sam at 4% and we give it to you, you pay us 10%. That's a very good deal, right? So we are going to make a profit of 6% on this money. So now the thing is that United Bank lends $90,000 to Mr. John, and Mr. John uses that money to buy a truck. Now let's assume that the company selling the truck to Mr. John also has an account with United Bank. You start to see how the thing's going, okay? Now, let's say the bank just credits the truck seller's account with $90,000. As you can start to see, there's no longer only $100,000 in the system, but another $90,000 has been created out of thin air just from transactions from Mr. John and the truck seller. Because Mr. John also has an account with the bank, and the bank lent the money to Mr. John. What technically that just means that the bank credited Mr. John's account with $90,000, right? Now, since Mr. John is an entrepreneur, he has a lot of other things to do, so he cannot drive this truck by himself. So he goes to another person called Mr. Sam, who is a family man. He has a family to feed here. He has his kid and his wife to take care of, and he's looking for a job. So he goes to Mr. John and says, I need a job to drive your truck. And they agree that, okay, you are going to drive my truck, and for this service, I'm going to pay you $5,000 every year, right? Now you start to see how this is going, because Mr. Sam also has an account with the famous United Bank. And what United Bank does is that when Mr. John pays Mr. Sam's salary, they just deposit it in his account at the bank. So they just credit his account. And you see that Mr. Sam, he has to take care of his family, right? He has to provide shelter for them. So he also has to pay rent on this house. So he has a landlord called Mr. Daniel. And let's say half of his salary every year goes to rent on his house or maybe his mortgage or something like that. But let's say rent because it's much more easy to understand. And then Mr. Sam now says, okay, I'm going to pay. Mr. Daniel says, okay, Mr. Sam, give my money. And he says, okay, I'm going to send it to your account. And Mr. Daniel also has an account with United Bank. So Mr. Sam just take his salary from Mr. John, deposit it in Mr. Daniel's account at United Bank. And you see that now, the system that started with just $100,000 now has 100,000 plus 90,000 plus 5,000 plus 2,500 for the rent. And you see that this is now 197,500, right? You start to see how the math is going. Now, the bank has 197,500. Means that the bank now can use that money to create another money, or maybe say to give another loan to somebody. Let's now say there's Mary here who has a bakery, or maybe she is a very good baker. She wants to start a bakery, or she already has a bakery and she wants to expand that bakery because business is booming, And she goes to the bank and say, "Hey, bakery, I want to build a new building to expand my bakery. I want to buy new machinery. I want to buy new cookers. I want to buy new stoves and things like that to expand the bakery." So she goes to the bank, to United Bank, and says, "Can you give me a loan?" And the bank says, "Okay, we are going to give you a loan of $50,000 to start your bakery, to expand your bakery at 12% interest." Let's say 12% interest. It's a lucrative business. So you see that they took the loan from Mr. John or from Uncle Richard and then gave it to Mr. John at 10%. Now they're giving it to Mary at 12%. So they're making an even extra profit on that. And you can start to see how a system that started with $100,000 now has 197,500 plus 50,000. That's about 147,500, right? And that is how the banks, through the banking system, create money. In this hypothetical case, we have one bank, but imagine that there's also other banks here, like Bank B, Bank B, where they all engage in this type of activity where, people deposit money and then they lend it out and so on and so forth. So as I just showed you right now, central banks and the government don't actually create most of what we see as money in the economy. Most of what we consider as money in the economy, in the system, is actually created by the banks. And banks have a very huge responsibility to create money. So that's why they're very important. They're very important to monitor what banks do. It's very important that a government has very good policies towards banks, because banks are the tap, they're kind of like the funnel towards how money flows in the economy. And if you imagine, if you have only one bank in the system, and this bank decides to only lend money to his friends or to people that he has connection with, then you realize that, and these people maybe they go and buy, let me say he's a private equity firm, and he doesn't actually create any job. He doesn't create any job for Sam. He doesn't create any revenue. He doesn't buy a truck to create a logistic company. He just goes and buy existing property that already exists. He doesn't build any new thing. You can start to see that he's going to push the price of the existing things higher, and everything is going to get expensive without actually any new thing being created. That's my thesis, that you should always have so many banks, and each bank should be regional enough so that they can care for that region where they are, and not just a few banks that can basically dominate by lending money only to people that they find interesting. So yeah, guys, that's how money is created. Most of what becomes money is credit, and the banking system creates 95% of all the money that we have in circulation through credit creation.